In this video, we'll talk about proofs by contradiction, and this will be one where we talk about the theory, and in a separate video, we'll have an example of a proof by contradiction. So if we're looking at a proof by contradiction, the idea is we're trying to prove a statement by negating all counterexamples. So if we're trying to negate all counterexamples, the idea is we already have some statement H implies C. We're going to call this statement S. And the idea is we are going to assume it's false. So we're going to assume we meet the hypothesis, but we don't get the conclusion. So and, not C. And I guess suppose would, or assume would be a terrible word. Let's use suppose. Let's suppose it's false, which would mean we satisfy the hypothesis and we don't get the conclusion. So this would be us saying, if we're trying to disprove the Pythagorean theorem with proof by contradiction, we can say, all right, let's suppose there's a right triangle out there where the side lengths don't satisfy a squared plus b squared equals c squared. Or in other words, a squared plus b squared does not equal c squared in some fashion. And the idea is if you do this, if you kind of walk down using definitions, theorems, whatever, what have you, you'll arrive at somehow, you'll have S and not S. Remember, S is our original statement. The statement will somehow both be true and false at the same time. The idea is, if I assume it's false, the only way that can happen is if one of these two things didn't get met, which can't be done because I've already supposed it. And that seems a little strange, but we will talk about it in an example in a different video. I just didn't want to, it's going to be a little lengthy, and this way we can keep it a little bit shorter. The theory is basically we assume it's false and we run it down. And people generally like proof by contradiction because there's a roadmap. You start with what you're allowed to start with. You start with your hypothesis. Then you do your supposition. You suppose it's false, and then basically you know, okay, I have to get to a point where either one of these two things is false in my proof. Some way it can't happen. I have to somehow say, okay, this is impossible. It gives you a roadmap for a proof. It's a good one to start with, and that's why people generally like it.